Welcome to the show. I'm so glad that you're here. You're going to be so glad that you're here. I've got an amazing guest that I met a little while ago and I've wanted to connect with, and finally we're connected. Dr. Debra Parker Oliver, who has done so much in her lifetime. Did you notice the doctor part of her name? I mean, anybody that gets that, PhD, MD, whatever D is amazing to me. And but she's got quite a story to tell. We've got a lot of similarities. And so Deborah, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for asking me. It's amazing how we connected right away.
Yeah. Well, I think when you've been through similar tragedies, similar hard times, then the connection just happens. It can just happen so quickly. But yes, absolutely. And so here you're going through life. You're married. Give us a little background on your life, just so people can get to know who you are.
Okay. My husband and I, this was my second marriage. My kids were 3, 5, and 7, so they were young. And he was older than I was, and thrilled to have 3 daughters join his life and his family. It was a great love story, second chance, and he was my biggest cheerleader. We had a lot professionally in common. He was into geriatrics. I was doing end-of-life care, actually running a hospice at the time before getting my PhD, and got married on a cruise ship, and life was about travel and building this family and giving these girls an opportunity to know what love and happiness were all about, and we were living our life in a wonderful way.
Yeah, things are happening great and good for you. And so you've got these 3 daughters. You had life before then as well, of course, like we all do. And but I love it that your heart was so much for hospice and the things that you did around that. I mean, it's not just, you weren't just running a hospice. I mean, that already sounds big, but it was so much more than that, right?
Yeah, hospice has been my passion for my entire professional career. I learned about it when I was in college. My stepfather passed away suddenly. We had to make some end-of-life decisions, and I found the hospice philosophy and what it does, and started a couple programs. I've been a social worker and administrator, and then decided that it can be even better, and went into research in order to do that, and then started focusing on caregivers, the other patient in the drama, the silent and invisible patient. And so I've done national speaking, I've been on national boards, I've done all of these things that to try to further the cause and make it even better than it is. And then I got to be a patient and a family member, and use it myself. And it was everything I thought it would be.
Yeah, well, that's good that it's everything that you thought it would be, because that's never a fun phone call to make, to call hospice.
No.
You need to,
No.
right? Yeah. So you're floating around long life. Life is good. You love going on cruises. You've been on more cruises than any other living human being, I think. And so my suggestion to you is, I don't know if you already do, but you need to speak on cruises. And then
Yeah.
now you can go on even more. So I love a cruise. I gotta say, I love a cruise. So we're like that way too. But anyway, so life is floating along. Your girls are young. You married this man of your dreams. What happened from there?
Well, and the youngest was in college. The other 2 had graduated from college. And all of a sudden, one day he reaches up and feels this lump in his neck when he was shaving. And I didn't think too much about it, but he decides when he's getting a shot, cortisone injection in his knee, just mention it to his doctor, who happened to be our very good family friend as well. And so he tells me about it, and the look on the doctor's face changed immediately. And we knew that we had something going on. So we went in, we got a biopsy and got the report. Then they went in and they did surgery to see how extensive it was. And sure enough, it was what they call nasopharyngeal cancer, stage 4. It had spread into his back and was behind the nose, was the primary site. And in the instant that you're told that, everything changes. In one instant, your life changes, and you have to step back and refocus and redefine what you're going to do and what your goals are, and figure out how you're going to approach this. And a lot of people would probably choose to be very aggressive and fight it and try to live as long as you can. We had been working in this field for a long time and knew that for us, quality was much more important. We had a whole list of memories that we wanted to make, and we didn't want our time to be spent in hospitals and clinics. So he did go through one round of chemotherapy to shrink the tumor. We didn't fool ourselves. We knew that it wasn't going to go away. We were buying a short amount of time for the least amount of side effects that we could. And we were both instructors in a school of medicine, and it was David's idea that we use this as an educational opportunity for our students. So we started making YouTube videos about our experience, which was not only helpful for the students, but it was helpful for us because it forced us to be a little more objective to our experience and stand back and think, what have we learned here? And what do people need to know about this? How can we be helpful? How can we change a system that's terribly broken, and teach these future doctors how to do this better? What can family members learn from this? What can patients learn from it? And what can the caregivers learn from doing this? And so we chose to take that approach. We started by making a video to break the news to all of our friends at our faculty meeting, because we were going to be there. He was going to be in chemotherapy. And how do you tell people? And so we decided to do it with this video that they played at faculty meeting. We didn't have to see their concern when they heard the news, and they could process it before they reached out and talked to us. And when they did that, everyone talked over and over again about what a valuable video that was on how to break bad news and how our students could learn from that as well. So that kind of facilitated our idea. But 42 months, we went through one course of chemotherapy, later one course of radiation therapy to shrink the tumor a little bit to solve some symptom problems. But mostly we traveled and decided that we would redefine hope from being the amount of time that you live to the number of bucket item lists that you get to check off.
Oh my God.
And how you mend relationships with your family and build and solidify that and leave a legacy. And that was David's goal, was to leave a legacy, and he certainly did.
Oh my word.
Yeah, we turned a tragedy into hope. Doesn't mean it was easy. Doesn't mean I didn't mourn. And doesn't mean that I love widowhood. But wow, those memories have brought a tremendous amount of comfort, and are things that we cherish. And and our kids and our grandkids cherish all of those. And we have living voice and sound and his personality on the YouTube videos, which is also a real cherished thing we have.
What a gift. What a gift for you. What a gift for your family. What a gift you gave the world. So you just said a whole lot that we need to unpack, because holy cow, the first thing is the news, right? So even the first thing is going to the doctor. Like with my husband, 15 years ago now, I was 47. So now you know how old I am. I was 47. He was 51, healthy, 6'3", 175 pounds, very active. And he ate great, like he was aware of what he was eating, although he thought donuts were the fifth food group. So I don't know how that plays in. But I was diagnosed with cancer, and a couple weeks later, he started having stomach pain. Went to the doctor, and they said, take some Tums. And 2 months later, he went back again. They said, take some Tums. Then he went back 2 months after that. So 4 months after my diagnosis, finally, he went to the ER and they ran tests. And, it takes a few days to figure out a diagnosis. Those are a long few days while you're waiting.
Long few days.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, you're hoping for the greatest news, like, it's all contained, it's all right here, we'll just take it. And so instead, you got not great news, stage 4. My husband was stage 4 as well, pancreatic cancer.
Oh,
And yes, and so 6 weeks, we had a great, wonderful 6 weeks together. We had 6 weeks together. So, but the first thing is the hearing the news. It's like, what do you do with this news? I remember feeling like, is this really happening to me, or is it happening to somebody else? Did you ever have a feeling like that?
you almost feel like you're just in a nightmare or something. And then like the next day when you wake up, you go, that surely didn't happen. And then you realize that it does. I remember walking out of the doctor's office and saying, well, at least it's not Alzheimer's disease. And ironically, then my mom died of Alzheimer's disease years later. And I am grateful that at least I knew that he knew me, and our relationship was able to hold together through all of that. But it is this incredible experience. Your body's trying to deny it, your mind's trying to deny it, and yet you have the reality, and you like stop breathing. You have these physical reactions. And how do you call the kids? How do you tell the kids? And he couldn't. So I did. I called our girls, and then I called his 2 sons. And ironically, everybody like a magnet was in our house in the living room then immediately. And we all processed that together that night. And when I think back, that's actually one of the most special nights of our lives, as hard as it was, but we were together. And it was at that point that we decided as a family, we would go through this as a family. Your first reaction is maybe we don't tell the kids, or we don't tell the kids everything, because you want to protect your children, regardless of their age. It doesn't matter. You want to, that's your natural inkling. But I'm so glad that we just instead take the opposite approach, and we brought them into everything. And so there were no conversations too sacred to have. They trusted us. They knew that they would get all the information, and they were with us the entire journey. And we needed that. And we got to do and build those memories all together as a family. And I think cancer is a family disease, and we don't treat it that way. And we decided to treat it that way. And I'm eternally grateful. Our kids are eternally grateful. Our grandkids, we cried together. We laughed together. We didn't hold anything back. And our grandkids were everywhere from 16 down to 6 months eventually. And so we had a wide range, and we went through it together.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
I'm just grateful.
Right. A whole different experience when you're going through it together than going through it alone. And you need that support. Doing it alone, I can't even imagine if it was just me and my husband. Like, I can't even imagine my family. My kids were so supportive. I had friends that were, and my sister-in-laws, and whoever. There were so many key people that just were so supportive, and that is a really important thing. I like how, hold on a second, my Alexa, for some reason, Alexa, stop. Sorry, silly Alexa. Okay. So it was interesting with us as far as telling the family, because when my husband went into the hospital, because doctors weren't running a test or anything, and so he went in, and and they decided to keep him overnight, which is like the first big, what do you mean they're keeping you overnight, right? Like, what is that all about? And then a spot on his liver, whatever. So my kids were all adults. I contacted my kids right away because I knew they needed to know. I mean, this is their dad, right? And so I contacted him right away. One of my sons was in the Navy at the time, so he was far from home. And that was hard. That's a whole different thing, right? When you've got a kid that's far from home. But they immediately, of course, were so supportive in there and wanted to be. And I agree with you. I mean, just be honest about it. I think there could be different language you use for younger ones, maybe, than older ones who've
Right.
had some experience and know more about things. But I think being honest about it is probably the best way to go about it. Just say it. And so then you're going through this time and you start making these YouTube videos. And who does that? Like, what a great idea. I remember when my husband was in the hospital. So he was only in the hospital the first few days as they're running tests. After that, we were just home and having a great time watching Cash Cab and playing gin rummy, whatever we were doing. But uh, but in the hospital, it's uh, a whole different story, right? You're not home and comfortable and whatever. And getting out of the hospital is awfully nice, and being able to be with people and surround yourself with people. But every step of the way, there are decisions you have to make,
So
right?
many, so
Yes.
many,
A-
so many.
And where's the book on that? Like, we didn't know. Like,
Right.
what decisions do you have to make? I mean, I have cancer, and I didn't know that there were decisions I had to make, but there are. And so knowing somebody else who's gone through what you're going through, that's also helpful. But so then you make these YouTube videos, which are so extremely helpful. So talk about that progression and what it felt
Y-
like to do.
You know, and the videos, we would get so many comments. And so we somehow or another, an AP reporter gets a hold of the fact that we're doing this and runs a news story about it. National news hit national news. We're invited to CBS, to the studio, and we're on the Today Show and talk about the making of these videos and what we're doing. And then the love, just people we don't even know, the love comes through the internet. It was incredible. Throughout the entire journey this happened. It was so awesome. And then you know that you have a forum to make change, because the system doesn't work well. We were teaching physicians how to break bad news, for instance, and this was an older oncologist that we had, and he literally broke news. He walks into the room and he said, you have cancer and it's not good, from the door.
Mm.
And he hem-haws around, and David's in shock, and I tend to intellectualize everything. But I'm in shock too. And we're trying to figure out, what do you mean nasal pharyngeal cancer? What is this? It's very rare. Question, question, question. But I could tell that David didn't get how bad it was. And we had talked earlier that morning, and I said, I think that this is going to be cancer. I think it's going to be at least a stage 2. He goes, oh, I don't think so. And I could tell from the conversation that we're talking about something much worse. And so I just directly asked the doctor, what stage? And then the doctor tells me. And being able to use that example to teach people how to do it differently, to where you don't have to be thinking and soliciting the information that you really need to know. Because he said, if you don't get treatment, you won't be alive 6 months. And so we knew we had all these decisions. And so as we made the decisions, we would make videos, because you're right, there's no guide on how to do this. So we would talk about the risk versus the benefits and what we're thinking about, even to the point of medicines. David would have to decide, do you want to be a little bit tired and confused and go to our grandson's state football championship game? Or do you want to be totally knocked out and miss the game? How do we balance that? And everything is a balancing act. But I remember very poignantly the power of those videos came to me as we were in the hospital. He was having trouble, wasn't getting the liquids, needed to have some IV fluids. And we had made a video on the cycle of chemotherapy and how you go through a really bad time and then a really good time. And how do you make the decision? Do you go to the hospital or do you stay home? Nobody tells you that. And we had a little system that we used to do that. And so he's laying in the hospital bed, getting these IV fluids on an outpatient basis. And this man in a wheelchair comes up, and his wife was in the bed next to us. And he said, "You're the Olivers." We go, "Yeah." And he said, I got to tell you that video has just saved my wife's life. And I'm going, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Because we went with what you said and we came in here and look, she's getting what she needs. And the doctor said if we'd have waited any longer, that it could have been a real fatal decision. And the only reason we did that is because David and Debbie said, and we saw it on the video." Oh my goodness. And
Yeah.
that's when you realize, first, it's a really sick system that doesn't educate people. We shouldn't have to be doing that. But we did. And it made a difference to even one life. And how powerful. And it just gave us more encouragement. So even I videotaped our celebration of life service, and that's online as well. Because nobody tells you what the options are anywhere along the way.
Right.
What is it like to be a caregiver? How do you handle that? It is not peaches and cream, as you know. It's a very, very difficult thing. And so we talk about that. We talk about how do you talk to a physician? How do you prepare for that? What kind of questions do you ask? How do you get them to listen? All those things along the way through the whole process. So it's hopefully it's a very helpful. They still get views. I still get notes. They're shown in classrooms across the country. I get notes from students. There was one professor that had their students write me letters about what it meant to them. That was really powerful. I'm so glad we did it. It was a precious
Yeah.
gift.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it is a gift that will keep on giving
Yeah,
because, more and more people need to know about it. So when they're facing it, they can turn into your YouTube channel and go, "Guy, they're talking about this and we're about to go through it and whatever." And obviously you knew all this stuff, but you don't know what you don't know
right,
quite often, right? And you're well educated and you're in the space, the hospice space. You've seen plenty of people going through things and how they went through it. So you came from a different place than a lot of people will come from.
right.
But how tough was it to make that decision? Chemo, no chemo, treatment, no treatment.
You
And they
know,
said, just a caveat to that, they said 6 months and
yeah,
and it was almost 4 years.
yeah, we got really lucky because the chemotherapy worked. And because I had resources, I knew experts across the country. And having been in hospice care and palliative care, it's not like I saw the success stories. But the overwhelming theme I always heard from people is, "I wish that I would have known I didn't have to do this because I spent so much time in clinics and hospitals." So what is that balance? How do you think about that balance? So we turned to a friend who was an oncologist and a palliative care doctor both. And he said, "Listen, what you got to understand is that you can change your mind any point along the way. And so as you get updates, if this chemo is working or not, and you're experiencing side effects or not, make your decision scan to scan. And don't think you've got to go until it's ending just because the doctor says you need 12 rounds. You're in control." And well, nobody tells you that in the healthcare system, right?
Mm.
Nobody. Whatever the doctor says, you do. So he would get his course, then they would take a scan. We would look at the scan, and we had decided that if it showed shrinkage, we would go on. If it did not show shrinkage, if it stayed the same or if it grew, we would stop because we were using the best drugs. And to use the second best drugs, if the first set didn't work, why borrow trouble and get the second set? So that was our thinking along the way. Always thinking, okay, you're getting sick. We're having problems because the day you start is the best day you will ever be. You will never be that good again. And then they give you chemo and you're half as good as you were. And then you get chemo and you're half as good again. And our friend explained that to us, and it helped us make those judgments. And so when we get a clean scan, you got them every 4 weeks. We go, okay, we got 4 weeks. We'll have a treatment in there, but once you get past that bad time, we'd have like a week of really good time. So we'd plan our travel for that week. So scan came, it's shrinking, that's good. Get chemo, get over the side effects, run and have a cruise, and then come back and get the next chemotherapy. And that's the cycle that we worked through. We finished all of the chemotherapy, and there's no visible tumors on the scan, which to me is still a miracle. And it's like, okay, we don't know how long we're going to have, but we know we have this. So scan go every 3 months. So we would do the same thing every 3 months. We'd make our plans for 3 months. We'd get the scan. It would tell us if we have 3 more months or if we stop. And then one day it reaches up and we have another lump.
Mm.
And only this time we had palliative care physician come and break the news to us in a much more sensitive way. And we're like, okay, so it's back. And of course, the oncologist goes, we can do this again. We can do this. No, however long it is, we're going to live. And we had 2 years after that. So we were so blessed, so blessed.
Mm. Yeah, no kidding.
That was just,
And then you're picking off your bucket list. I mean, what
and
a way to live. I mean, that's kind of the thing, right? Like you can choose, am I dying or am I living?
right. And we didn't let anything stop us. And that doesn't mean we didn't end up in clinics and and ERs and things in other places, but we were prepared. We went to the mountains. He didn't get hydration was a big issue. He just would think he was drinking a lot and he wasn't. And he got dehydrated. I could see what was going on. Okay, we got to go to the ER and get some fluids. And he'd go, no, I don't want to do that. And I'm like, okay, you throw up one more time. That's it. We're going. So we'd make these deals and negotiate along the way. But we were able to go to the Arctic Circle and do an Alaskan cruise. We were able to go to Europe with our kids and go to the Acropolis. And, we stood on mountaintops, and that's where we found hope, not by going and getting more chemotherapy.
Wow. Wow.
There's a term, and it's so true. And I know you can relate to this. It's called interactional suffering. It's the suffering you have when you interact with the healthcare system, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they work on their own clock. They strip you of your identity when you go in. Sometimes you get sicker when you're in the hospital than you did when you were at home. I would get his pain controlled. We'd go to the hospital and they wouldn't wake him up in the middle of the night to take his medicine. So then his pain would get out of control. And it was just always, and that interactional suffering that you have and we had our friends taking care of us. It didn't matter. It actually sometimes made it worse because you couldn't tell them what you were thinking. Is the hardest part. And if you can avoid that and be proactive, so guess what? I took extra pain pills with me. I never let him spend the night by himself again. And if he needed something, I gave it to him. We get creative about how we go about fixing those things. And, he would refuse to wear those gowns open up and let his butt flapping. And he goes, I'm dying. I can wear anything I want to. And so, you remember you are in control of your body. And that's where we found hope to try to
Wow. I love that because cancer touches everybody at some point in your life.
Absolutely.
Not that everybody gets cancer, but somebody somebody you love will get cancer at whatever point in your life. And to know that you don't have to just do what the doctors say, which I think is so easy to do,
Right.
just do what the doctors say, especially because there's this, when you're told you have a terminal disease, terminal cancer, and they're like offering you this carrot of hope, right? This little,
Yeah.
here's some hope, then it's so easy to just go, okay, then that's what we're going to do. We're going to do this thing and think that that's your only option. And realizing it's not your only option is a good thing. And I think, with doctors, they have protocol, right? There's certain
Right.
things. If it's this cancer, this is the chemo we do it for this long, this is what we do. When really everybody's such an individual that,
And they have a whole different language. I think the best example is he was having vomiting that we couldn't get controlled. And so they said, okay, if you do a little radiation therapy, we can shrink the tumor that's pushing on to that particular part of the brain and reduce your vomiting. And we're like, hey, okay, that makes sense. That's for symptom control. So
Mhm.
he was taking and doing that radiation therapy without a whole lot of side effects. And then we got notified that we were to receive this award for our educational work in the UK, in London. And he's like, we're going to London. I don't care about this. This is important. We're going to do this. How exciting. It's in this fancy building. We got to get all dressed up. And so he sat down and told the doctor, I'm stopping chemo or radiation therapy. We're going to go and we're going to do this. The doctor said, that's great. We'll just pick it up when you come back home. And David said, no, I've quit vomiting. I've gotten the benefit out of it. I'm done. I'm just done. I'm not going to come back. He goes, no, come back. I can cure you. I kid you not. He used that word. And David said, cure me. You're going to get the Nobel Prize because there is no cure for my cancer. And the doctor says, no, by cure, I mean, it'll disappear for at least 6 months. David said,
Mm,
that's not what the word cure means.
right,
The word cure means it's gone forever.
right,
And if I take more, then I'm going to get more side effects, right? And he goes, well, yeah, that's the price that you pay. He says, I'm not willing to buy that. Don't want that price. Right now, I quit the vomiting. I feel good. We're going to go do this. We're going to come home. We're going to live our life, and I'm done. He never had any vomiting after that, by the way. It was the right decision.
yeah,
Didn't get stuck with all of the other horrible side effects that you can have with radiation therapy. But nobody gave me that option.
right, right,
We
right,
had
right.
to empower ourselves to make those decisions.
Yeah. Well, and doctors want to keep you alive for as long as they can keep you alive, right? I mean, that's
And,
their
if I'm in a
goal.
car wreck, that's what I want.
Exactly, exactly. That is their goal. They take an oath, to keep you alive, and so they're gonna do what they can to give you the most days. But if they're not going to be quality days, like if it takes away from the living, that's pretty tough. And I'm sure people that are watching have seen people suffer
Yeah.
because of, chemo's not easy on your body. I mean,
No,
therapy is not easy on your body. Radiation's not easy on your body. I mean, anything that you do to your body is something that your body's not made to do necessarily. Like it's trying to stop something going on in your body. And so it's not easy. And the side effects are big. And so take it into consideration. I think it's just such wisdom. And it's so empowering when you know you're in control. The doctor's not in control. They make suggestions. They tell you what the history has been on your particular disease. They let you know what kind of results have happened based on your disease. But it's still you.
and
And
you've got to ask questions.
yes.
And because it's not that they're mean and withholding information, although I do think sometimes they're trying to protect you, but you've got to feel free to ask why, and what does it mean, and what are the risks versus what are the benefits, and how does that fit into what my goals are and what my definition is. And it's not just the person with the cancer that needs to ask the questions. I need to know,
Mhm.
because it for us, it was a joint decision. I mean, and I know that that's not always true, that sometimes patients will want one thing and the spouse will want something else. And it affects both of us. My life went on hold for 4 years. I was trying to work and keep us going, and I lost a lot of my health. You know, caregivers' mortality decreases by 10 years over those
10
that don't
years.
caregiver.
Wow.
And most caregivers end up with at least one chronic disease. I ended up with 3,
Mm,
all because you give everything to this person that you love for an unknown period of time. And you're doing things that you're not trained to do. Nobody trains you on how to uh, just even monitor the medications, right? You have
right.
all these pills and they're all the same. Why do they make them all white and round? And once in a while you get a square one or a pink one and you go, okay, at least I know what that one is. How do you keep track of all of that? Nobody teaches you any of that. And yet this person who you love most in the whole world is completely dependent upon you making the right decisions because they're not able to make those decisions at the time. No one,
Yeah.
there's
It's
no
it's so
preparing people for
true.
that.
Right. Yeah, it's so true. It's like there needs to be classes, there needs to be books like the book that you wrote that is so helpful, the videos that you did, anything that you can do to gain some information, gain some education on what it is that you're dealing with and figure out how to not end up with a chronic disease.
Yeah, how
So
do you survive yourself? Because
right, how do you survive?
this person's more important. And so you put your doctors, you're already going to a million doctor's appointments. So you don't have time to go to the doctor and to the dentist and all those things too. That's double work. So you put all of that on hold and then you end up with problems yourself then or later. And we we don't do enough in medicine or even as a society to support these people, and those that do it for years, for people that have dementia, for instance, are just saints.
Mm,
There's no other word for it.
yeah,
Because
yeah, for
they
sure.
slowly lose their person. And that is the other thing, and I'm sure you went through this, you're going to lose this person that you're giving your life to. You don't know when, but you're living with trying to enjoy now, but being incredibly sad because you know what's going to happen, that one day they're not going to be there.
Right.
You may get frustrated with them, you may get mad because of this or that, and then you feel guilty. I shouldn't be getting mad. They're dying,
Right.
but
Right. There's so
nobody's
much.
paying attention to me, and I'm hurting too. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so it's just
Yeah.
so much emotion.
Right. 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 And it's the unknown, right? Like with
Completely.
my husband, they were saying you're young, you're healthy, you could outlive the odds, live beyond a year. If you live a year after a pancreatic cancer diagnosis, that's like a miracle. So, but you could outlive the odds, you got lots of time. And it was 6 weeks. And we had no idea that it was going to be 6 weeks. And in some ways, it was the shortest 6 weeks of my life. And in some ways, it was the longest 6 weeks of my life.
Right.
And because looking back, it was like, oh my gosh, all that happened in 6 weeks. Like that's crazy. But there is something that happens emotionally, psychologically, when it's inevitable, which we're all going to die, but
Surprise,
if you're
surprise.
not given a diagnosis that's telling you you're going to die sooner than you think, right? So there's
Yeah.
something though that goes on that it's like, okay, how much longer? When's the day? How do I prepare? What do I need to do? And there is just so much. And so I want to know this from you. So you did the thing. I mean, you talked to the doctors. You're helping so many people through everything that you're doing. You went from hospice administrator at one point in your life to a hospice receiver, palliative care, being on both ends of that. And hospice, our hospice was amazing. Faith Hospice, they were so good, so, so, so good. But even with hospice, you have to ask questions, right? And
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, yeah. And if you need to see the doctor, you need to see the doctor. Like you do need to advocate for yourself and advocate for the one you love. But this is what I'm really curious about. So you made the decisions you made more decisions along the way, you kept doing the thing. And but the emotional is happening, and but you're taking these trips
Yeah.
and you're spending this time together. How how was that as far as like for me, I know there were times that I would just start crying. I
Oh,
just start crying and yeah, and he'd hold me and say, you know, don't cry for me. You know, don't cry for me, cry for you. You're the one that's going to be here, you know, whatever. But the good times were magnified, I felt like. Like, did you
it's
feel like that?
it's truly a roller coaster. The highest of highs as we're standing, at the Arctic Circle and are putting our hands in the tundra along the way. And at the same time, this is the only time. This is the last time. I distinctly remember the last cruise that we were on. We knew it was progressing. We knew this was going to be our last cruise. And the contrast of that. So you hold up as brave a front as you can because you don't want to get anybody else upset. And then at night, right, when the house is quiet, you silently cry. Little did I know until he happens to mention, as we're on stage presenting to 300 people, that he knew that I was doing that. And because he wouldn't say anything, he would just give me that space. And then one day we're on a stage in front of 300 people sharing our story. And he goes, I've got to tell you, what's hardest for me is when I hear her cry at night. And I'm like, oh, thought I was getting by with that. But yeah, or when you're in the car alone, right? You leave, got to go get something.
Yeah,
And
anytime that
nobody
you're
wants to
even,
hear your feelings. Nobody, that's the painful stuff. It's a very, very lonely journey because you, especially I think as a wife, you represent what everybody's most terrified of. They're less terrified of being the cancer patient than they are of being the surviving spouse. Because everyone who is lucky enough to be married to their soulmate, don't they say, I'm so lucky I don't have to worry about that. If something ever happens, how would I get out of bed? I know I said that myself. If something were to happen, how could I even breathe? How would I get out of bed? And do they want to hear my pain and how bad it really is? No.
no,
Do you want to share it with your kids? No.
right.
The only people that understand it are other people going through it, which is why I'm such an advocate for support groups, but they're so hard to get to when you're going through this. Why I'm doing a lot of my research now is on online support groups and the benefits that they can play. Because
That's so good.
it's only somebody else who's going through it who can handle
Really
what
gets
you
it.
have to say.
It's so true. It's so true when you're standing in that line at the funeral home and people are coming and saying, and then, and I understand, you know, I just, I, you don't.
No.
And you don't have to. The reality is you don't have to. And hopefully you never will.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, that's right.
So it's okay to go, you know, I feel your pain, but I don't feel your pain. Like I haven't been through this. I don't know what it's like. I can't imagine. I can't imagine, which is true. You can't imagine what it's like. So just the support of being there, the support of loving, the support of, you know, a card in the mail or a casserole. I don't know, but people give love different ways, but
Right.
pour out the love, right? Like keep pouring out the love. You know, we haven't gone anywhere. Just keep giving. And my situation's so different than yours because people were, you know, pretty active in our lives because it was 6 weeks. I don't know what would have happened had time gone on and on and on, right? Because people tend to forget.
Yeah,
They're not
I mean, that makes a difference. And to the world, I mean, you even look at the videos, he looks really good, even the very last one that he did. And people would say he looks so good. I mean, yes, he lost his hair and he looks different, but he seems so great. Well, he was putting on a show, and I knew that. And great, I'm glad that he looks so good. The doctor said, you tolerate this so well, you should have more. And he goes, you don't know what it's really like. No, I'm not tolerating it well. I just want you to think that I am. But when it goes on so long, people get tired. That being said, I feel like we had a ton of support. He had a ton of support. I think people forget, not intentionally, but they would say, they walk into our house, how are you, David? Right?
Mhm.
No one wanted to hear how I was.
Yeah.
That's the reality. And when somebody's been through it because they do it differently. Because they
Yes.
will walk in, how you doing? I'm glad to hear it. I know this must be really hard for you, Debbie.
Mhm.
I can't imagine. Just that acknowledgement. Or they walk you out to the car. The hospice nurse was so good about that. She would do her thing with him. And then I walk her to the door and she'd go, why don't you come on out? I want to show you something in my car. And then she'd spend time with me.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
because if the caregiver goes down, who's
Right.
going to take care of the patient?
Right.
And
Right.
people don't think about that.
Right. And we're not in a position to fall apart.
No, you can't.
We're in a position where we have to keep it together. Keep it together for ourselves, for our husbands, for our families, for our kids, right? Like
Yeah.
we have to keep it together. We're not allowed that room to fall
And you let it crack a little bit, just to let
Mhm.
enough out that the dam doesn't overflow. But it's not peaches and cream. And the most helpful thing during the grieving period, I'll never forget this, is after he died, somebody who had been through it, another widow, and how I hate that word.
Oh gosh, I'm with
It
you.
just is
Totally with you
terrible. It
on
gives
that.
you
Yes.
cringe.
Yes.
But she came to me during visitation. She goes, I have one piece of advice. Just keep breathing.
Mhm.
And that was, and the way she looked at me, she knew, and you knew. And I knew I'd get a call in a week or two after everybody else has gone on. And you'd get another call, a few months later. How are you really?
Yeah.
And it was
Yeah.
somebody I could tell how I really was.
Right. 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 And we all need that for sure. So, and that's an interesting thing too, is that you know it's going to happen. You don't know when, but I had people say funny things. They're well-meaning but funny things, and
Right.
and say even like at the funeral, well, you knew it was coming.
Yeah. So it
It's like,
makes it better, right?
oh, okay, all right, well that works. You're right. I knew it was. I mean, what are you supposed to say to that? And he put up a good fight, and what you should just be proud, or tell you how you should be acting or how you should be responding. And it's like, well, everybody gets to respond how they do. Everybody gets to grieve how they do. I'm writing a book on grief right now because people tend to judge other people's
Oh,
grief,
it's
right?
unbelievable.
And it's
Yeah.
like, let people grieve how they grieve. I mean, there's somebody came out with a book, whatever the name escapes me, but here it is. These are the stages of grief. This is the order that you go through them. And for some reason, we've taken that as Bible truth, and that's the only way to grieve, and that's it. And if you're outside that grieving box, something's wrong with you, and you
Yeah.
need to grieve differently,
That was
right?
Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and
Right, right,
those
right. There you go. Yeah.
stages of grief. It makes it sound so magical because it means once I get through that, then I don't ever feel that again. It's not true. Um, and I don't think she ever actually meant it that way. I actually got to meet her once. It's a circular experience, and
Mhm.
you just keep going through the circles. I I, I liken it to, you get better at knowing when the tidal wave is coming, the wave of grief that hits you unexpectedly and overwhelms you, and especially initially almost drowns you. And then you learn where your lifesavers are and things that you can hold on to. And then you get a little smarter because you can see it starting to come, and it's going to come. There's nothing you can do to stop it. but you grab your lifesavers so that you know, don't drown. And you know that if you just keep swimming, that you're going to survive. It's going to be rough, but you're going to survive. And the waves come, they're a little less intense, and you're a whole lot more prepared. And it's a process, but it's got nothing to do with I feel this now and then I don't ever feel that again.
Right, right. Oh my gosh, what a
Just
great
not that
point.
simple.
And the whole circular, that's so true. And by the way, it's a great book because people need to know different things that happen while you grieve. And so I'm
Yep.
I'm not saying that, but there's more,
Yeah.
and there's different and how people take things and whatever. And one of the greatest pieces of advice I got was way after my husband died, but shortly after my father died. I just, I knew I needed to get help. Like whatever, I adored my dad, adored my husband, and uh, just, I needed help. So I went and talked to somebody. And the one piece of advice I got that was so good was that you don't have to grieve all at once. Right. So I wanted, at that point in time, I was thinking I need to rent a hotel room and I just need to go and cry.
I had out.
But my fear was that I wouldn't stop, that I
Mhm.
wouldn't come out of it. And so I was afraid of that. So I was afraid to even go into it because am I going to come out of it? And the advice she gave was to go buy a pretty box at Hobby Lobby, wherever, with a lid on it. And then in the box, put things that remind you of your person, right? So pictures, whatever, something they gave you, whatever it happens to be, put the lid on and put it up on a shelf. And then give yourself 15 minutes, 30 minutes, tell yourself a time, set the timer, take the take it off the shelf, open it up and grieve and grieve and grieve. Put it all back, timer goes off, put it lid back on and put it on the shelf. And man, that changed everything for me because and I'll tell you, so I did this. I got the box, I
Mhm.
put the stuff in the box, I put it up on the shelf, and I never took it down because all I needed to know was I didn't
That
have
you
to
could.
grieve all at once. That's all I needed. I didn't ever need to even take it down.
Mhm. And it is so powerful to know once you have been through it and long enough to know that the pain will stop because you think I'll never stop crying. When will I not? When will I laugh? And I remember the first day that I realized I'm singing again. I mean, I experienced joy again, and I didn't think I ever would. And every time you make one of those little accomplishments, then you go, "Oh, there's hope. That's real
Right.
hope
Right.
that something's going to change." And it's not that I forgot about him. It's not that I was any less sad. It's not, time doesn't heal. Time allows you to learn how to cope
hmm
and
I always
spread that pain.
exactly. I always think of it as you don't get over it. Like that's a term I never like to hear
Right.
as well. You're probably over it by now. Well, no, no, you don't get over it, but you can get on top of it. And because for a while it is a blanket on you. And little by little, you peek out of the blanket.
And then
And
it can come back again when
yes,
somebody else dies.
yeah,
It's like, here I go again. I'd forgotten how bad this is because I'd learned to live through it. But that second time is still easier than the first time was.
hmm yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And lean on people and people give support and just let's
Yeah.
just all love on each other and help each other out because we're all gonna be the receivers of it at some point in time. We're gonna need the help. And so just whatever. So what would you say the greatest piece of advice you got? You talked about the breathe, like that's huge. Was there something else while you were going through things while he was alive or after he passed away?
Actually came from my husband. And it's a subtitle for my book. He called it the love grief equation. The more you love, the more you grieve. Grief is the price of love. If you don't love, then or you love a little, you grieve a little. You love a lot, you grieve a lot. But when it comes, if you focus on the love side, so I put myself in those amazing moments, those times of love where you just felt overwhelming love, then you remember why you're grieving, and the grief hurts a little bit less. So that's the love grief equation.
Mm.
And it saves me on more than one occasion.
Yeah. Yeah. How long has it been for you?
It will be 9 years.
9 years.
And sometimes it feels, well, my 30th wedding anniversary is coming up in 2 weeks.
Mm.
And I was acting all weird and being emotional, and you're like, why? And then you realize,
Right. Right. You look at the
because it
calendar.
ends up, it's not the day that's the problem, it's the time leading up to the day that can be the problem.
Mhm.
But at least I know. And so you go through your own little thing to make it through and to survive through and to celebrate. But yeah,
Yeah.
love lives on. And
Well, well, and that's a big part of it too. I think, Debbie, is that when I came to grips with being a 47-year-old widow, I decided how I was going to live, right?
right,
And I decided the best way to honor my husband was to live fully. Like I would love if I could change it and he'd be here with me, but I can't.
right.
But then my choices are to wallow, to live halfway, like I get to pick how I'm going to live. And
Mhm.
I choose to just live full on, full out, enjoy what I can all the time, be with friends and family. And it's a choice you get to make. And my life is fantastic.
You know,
Doesn't mean that I don't wish he was here, but my life is amazing.
and I try to enjoy the things that I found since he's gone that I didn't find before. I have new things and new
Mhm.
experiences. And I built a house, and I built it the way I would like it. And some of it he would have hated. He would have absolutely hated that. That was not him, but it's mine. And
Mhm.
it gives me great pride. And so there are some good things that you learn that, okay, and I don't worry about pleasing anybody else. I live by myself still. If I, whatever I want to do, I do. Would I have it different? No question.
Right.
But like you say, you can say, well, here's what I lost, or you can say, here's what I found.
Exactly.
And I
Exactly.
have found some very important things. I have found some things out about myself that are very important.
Mhm.
Um,
I
to the
found
point at which you go now, do I want to ever give those things up? I don't know.
right. One thing that I found is that if an appliance breaks, if you need to change a tire, whatever it is, just go to YouTube. Go to YouTube and
Yes,
you
it's
can
a
fix
good.
anything. So I'm a plumber, I'm an electrician. I can do it all because somebody on YouTube is showing me how. And so that's a comfort to me. I still don't like taking out the trash, I have to say. But and somebody else mows my lawn. But I can fix stuff. And
Every
there's
time
a
you
sense of
do
pride in that.
something, every time you do something you didn't think you could do, you're so empowered and you
Hmm.
feel so good. I mean, that's just a feeling that is indescribable.
It
Uh,
is. I should do my own YouTube channel and tell everybody how to fix stuff because now I know.
that's right.
So if people want to go to your YouTube channel, how do they get there?
So all of the videos are on my book website, which is Legacies from the Living Room, the Love Grief Equation. And they're all there and labeled, and links to how to get the book. Of course, any normal retail channel and Amazon and all that, the book is available. I never planned on writing a book. My husband told me I would write a book. Didn't believe him, but I had so many people ask about things that I decided to do it. And it was the smartest thing I did because it was so
Yeah.
thorough.
It's healing. It's all the stuff that is good. about it. And it's so helpful for other people. If you know somebody who's going through grief right now, who's lost somebody, who's in the process of, this is the book to buy. Like, there, of all the books in the world, Legacies from the Living Room, I'm telling you, is so good. It's a book I wish I would have had. I wish so badly I would have had it. And it is a book that I will be buying for people whenever they're going through whatever they're going through. Debbie, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for all the wisdom that you shared. I appreciate you so, so much. And thank you all for being here. And until next time, be blessed.
Thank you so much, Kim.